to Around the NFL, presented by Barefoot Wines.
I'm Dan Hanzus, joined by two heroes, Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. Boys, it's ATN Coast to Coast for Week 7, the preview show.
For such a great reason. You're home surprising your dad on his birthday weekend. I think we can handle this. We're going to have to, though, bring extra energy, Marc, I think, to just, send that energy over to New York.
I totally agree. Dan, I'd like to know what kind of breakfast your mom made you back in your childhood home. What happened there?
It's a great question. It's It's fall in New York here in the lower Hudson Valley. The foliage is just off the charts. Beautiful. Deb prepared some eggs with onions,
oh, wow.
a little bit of ham, and then some paprika, which is a trick of Deb's for years.
Trick.
So, it tastes like home here. It feels like home. I'm wearing my orange autumnal button down to celebrate actually feeling what fall is like again. And I'll tell you something else, boys. Obviously, the Yankees in the playoffs right now, so it's a good sports scene here. It's on in New York City with the Jets and Giants. People going nuts here. Talked to a cabbie. I talked to a guy at the airport. There is a lot of positive buzz. And, of course, the Giants are getting more of it here because this is more of a Giants town than a Jets town. But you feel that pulsation that has not been happening in a long time in this neck of the woods.
Andy, I think you can respond to them as a Jets fan. Yeah, the Giants are 5-1, but the Jets are better and have more talent. Let's be real. That's what I would tell them, just to start.
That's how you handle a cabbie. I think that's a good move with the cabbie. Just get confrontational, as Gregg would.
So you know how it is. Nothing changes for the preview show. We're going to do all the games to come here in Week 7. Gregg, it's crazy how it flies, buddy.
Just the season just keeps moving. It moves along, and it's faster than we expected.
How did people? I hope you're checking out all the ATN content, the QB Index Haiku Special. Hearing a lot of good buzz about it. Please check it out if you have not yet.
I mean, it was a raging hit because I've looked at the metrics and the ratings behind it, and I don't know what to attribute it to, but off the charts participation from the listeners, and also an interactive episode where they kept tweeting us saying, "Please, more of this." It was delightful.
As it was happening.
Yeah, sure.
Wow. It was a pre-recorded show that had a high interaction level.
That's
right.
right.
If we can get Marc reading poetry in general, we should mix that more into the program moving forward. It's always a winner.
You know what? I bet the listeners would love it. And you know what, Marc? Let's just put that on your plate on a weekly manner. We need 32 haikus every Wednesday 6 a.m., and then we'll do a recording.
That's when I hit Craigslist and hire an intern from USC to start writing my content, which I've done before, and where it's quite successful.
Yes, you will undoubtedly reach out to an intern at USC at some point. All right, let's get into the game, starting with the primetime action as we always do before we hit the draft.
It's time for Sunday Night Football pregame, presented by Barefoot Wines.
It is the Pittsburgh Steelers at 2-4 at the Miami Dolphins 3-3, and the big story around this one, Greggy, is Tua is expected to return. As we expected, this was going to be a different process than a typical player, given the high-profile nature of his particular head injury. So even though he was cleared last week, he was not playing. Now another week passes. They feel comfortable. Obviously, people are going to be watching it closely to see how Tua reacts and hopefully he's going to be okay. But it's going to be a big lift to Miami, who, after a big start to the season, things have gone sideways.
They have, and I don't necessarily think it's because of the quarterback position. They've certainly gotten bad luck, where in 3 games in a row now, they've had their starting quarterback knocked out in the first half. And yet, I don't think their quarterback play is really the reason they keep losing these games. Mike McDaniel's had a bad month because I think the way he handled Tua's concussion publicly was problematic, and I don't think he looked good. And I'm surprised how little he seems to have reflected and have regrets about how he's handled it publicly. Yet, I think he's such a good coach. I was watching Teddy and Skylar Thompson look pretty good last week. I was surprised you were so hard on Teddy, Marc, on the recap show. They moved the ball, and this Steelers defense is a defense you can move the ball against. I have more confidence that Tua Tagovailoa and his great wide receivers, of course, will move the ball up and down the field than I had for Tom Brady moving the ball up and down the field on Pittsburgh. I just don't think this is a defense that's going to slow them down much.
Yeah, watching that Dolphins game, I kind of was wondering why, or with the Bucs-Steelers game, why Tom Brady didn't take more shots downfield, because I think you can do that against Pittsburgh. They're the 30th pass defense in the league, and it's set up well for Tua, for Jalen Waddle, for Tyreek Hill, I think, to make plays. You know, before Tua went out, he was 9 yards per attempt, highest in the league, tops in the league. He also, though, I think something hidden in his game, he has a 4.9 turnover-worthy play rate this year, which is 6th in the league. There have been a couple. He's been lucky on some would-be interceptions, on some fumbles that got recovered by the Dolphins. The biggest thing for me, Teron Armstead is back at practice. If he's back in the lineup, that is a big part for their offense, because without him, they have struggled with backup left tackles there.
And you look at statistically, during the 3-game losing streak, they've averaged just 16 points a game. But even the week 1 through 3, you say, 27.7. But a lot of that was done in that huge shootout comeback win they had in week 2. So I'm very interested to see where this offense is at. I think it's interesting, even with the points down during Tua's absence. You know, Waddle and Hill, they were getting theirs in most of these games. Even the game against the Jets, where they didn't put up big numbers, they gained 100 yards in pass interference penalties. So, you know, even I wrote about it earlier this week that you almost hit pause on their season the moment Tua's head smacked the turf in Cincinnati. But I also really interested to see if this fixes things, quote unquote, and they get on back to their winning ways. Because let's face it, this is a game they should win at home. First primetime Sunday night game in a while against the Steelers team that, you know, what they are at this stage. Miami's got to win, or you got to re-examine where they stack up in the AFC playoff mix.
I agree, and yet I think these are both underrated teams. Like I think everyone's given up on Pittsburgh because they started 1-4. Every single game they've played has come down to the final play of the game, except for the Bills game. And everyone remembers that Bills game. It was a terrible game. I get it. But the other 5 against kind of mid-level teams all came down to the final possession. Now they're going to start Kenny Pickett, it appears, in this game. He's coming off a concussion as well, but he practiced fully, and the reporting is that he will play. Trubisky played so well coming off the bench that I actually was curious to see if somehow that loosened him up, because he was much more aggressive, but we're not going to find out because it looks like it's going to be Pickett. But hopefully he throws the ball down the field a little more like he had been to his receivers. Claypool got off last week. I thought the Dolphins defense played their best game of the season by far last week. Really looked like their old selves against Minnesota for the most part. I think this is a sneaky good game, and I hate giving the Dolphins 7 points. This is not even in the lock zone. The Dolphins
too much wood.
Are
too much wood.
So favored. I think these are two teams. It'll be it's not like 2 Super Bowl contenders, but it'll be a good game.
I do attribute some of what Miami's defense did to Minnesota, just the Vikings' way of life, where they had like about 28 3-and-outs and then 2 beautiful drives that went for touchdowns. But I think you can obviously you thrive against the Steelers offense, but I love that Pickett's back in there, because I think if you look at his, the turnovers and stuff, a lot of that to me masks what he's been, is an aggressive downfield thrower who makes better use of their weapons. I know Trubisky looked great in relief, but I would not want to continue with Mitch Trubisky when you got Pickett showing up the way he has.
All right, should be a good game on Sunday night. Let's pivot now to the Monday Night Football matchup. And Greggy, it works out well for you. You handle our Monday Night Football recap every week, and now it's your team. On some level, the New England Patriots that will be hosting the Chicago Bears. I don't need to see the Bears again in prime time, but we've talked about it. It just happens. It is what it is. It's the market. So the Bears are back in prime time once again to face a Patriots team that's really found itself in the last 2 weeks here, Marc. They won 29-0, obviously, against Detroit. Then they beat up on your team. Well, maybe your team, maybe not, the Browns. And now they get the Bears, which seems like another plus matchup, especially in this is a game I would think about locking. At home.
You're not allowed. They're too big of a favorite. That's
unbelievable.
A little surprising too.
At home in prime time against Justin Fields, who has shown signs of growth the last 2 weeks, but I've seen it before. Justin Fields could be seeing ghosts, Sessler, on Monday night.
I think if you're Bill Belichick, you're absolutely adoring what's unfolded over the past fortnight and what will come on Monday night. This is a great matchup for the Patriots. And I think one thing, if you look at their metrics as a run defense, they're low. It doesn't look good. But then they put the clamps on the Lions. And they did the same to the Browns a week ago. 70 yards. That Cleveland ground game has demolished people. And Belichick specialized against that. And what did the Bears do well? Well, with Justin Fields, they run the ball really well with their backfield, with Khalil Herbert as well. And so if that's the formula and they can shut down Chicago on the ground, which I think they're going to be able to based on the last 2 weeks, then you're asking the Bears to make money through the air, and that is a big problem. I mean, Justin Fields is on pace for fewer completions and attempts. You have to go back to like Doug Williams with the 79 Bucks to find a comparison.
Wow.
It's just they're not a modern-day passing offense right now. You can squint and see it at times, but it's really been when they've been good on the ground that they've done anything on offense, and this is a tough matchup.
Patriots struggle with athletic running quarterbacks over the years because they play this sound defense that can stop like the logical plays. And Justin Fields is a great runner, so maybe they'll break that out a little more. They really haven't much, but I've seen enough out of this Patriots defense that they do well against mediocre or worse quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah.
Historically.
I mean, they can do it, and they've got a nice little secondary going. They've got 3 safeties out there, almost every snap. Adrian Phillips is playing great. They got these 2 rookies, Jack and Marcus Jones. They're playing great, and this game means a lot, Danny, to Bill Belichick. It's crazy. The NFL schedule makers absolutely put this game on Monday Night Football in this spot with the hopes that Bill Belichick would be passing George Halas, the great Bears grand poobah.
He was fine.
On Monday Night Football. And it worked out. I guess they knew he could have been either tying or breaking, so there was like a chance either way.
Sure.
And they got it. And we saw last week, and this you can say I'm like only partly a Patriots fan. Well, I'm a full Belichick fan, and I love how much this means to him. He's not even hiding it. Like, it means so much to him, and he's having the Patriots, like, go check out the Jim Brown name and statue in Cleveland. It's all connected, and he's talking about the history, and he's talking about 7 minutes of house. I'm sorry, I got to stop ranting, but this means a lot to him, so I love it's happening in primetime.
Listen, Belichick, even me, as time has went on now, and we've moved out of the Brady era, I have a much warmer feeling about Belichick, and I think he deserves all these big moments that are going to come his way now at this point. So this is a nice setup, and again, we've seen too many of these games, these primetime New England games. And I know Brady's not there anymore, but Bill devours young quarterbacks in these type of settings. This does feel like a multiple touchdown win. I hope it's not, because I want to see entertaining football. And also, I know, Greg, I'm kind of picking up that you're trying to let the schedule makers off the hook for giving us the Broncos 5 weeks out of 6 by saying they nailed this.
No,
but you're right.
I'm
I'll give them credit.
They
did.
yes. Okay, yeah. Okay.
I'll give you credit for this one, because they really did to kind of, I'm sure this was part of their internal thinking that the Patriots would have around this record at this time. So it works out. We'll turn it. It's going to be a celebration of Bill by the second half. Totally.
Yes. Quickly, by the way, the Bears are at 10 a.m. every single game the rest of the season on the West Coast.
Where they belong.
1 p.m. on the East Coast. And we should mention Mac Jones is expected to be available for this game, according to Mike Reese from ESPN. And he is expected to start this game, according to Jeff Howe at The Athletic. And that goes with a lot of local reporting that inside the building, they were never considering going away from Mac Jones, at least not at this point. And I think
Greggy,
what?
I got to take there. I mean, this feels like the Cooper Dak situation, where no quarterback controversy, but if you have a young player playing really well in a very positive game script situation, and the guy that's recovering has the type of injury that could be easily aggravated, which a high ankle sprain absolutely can. We've learned that. Why not go with Zappy and give Mac one more week?
Let's say that Mac Jones ever came into this game and struggled after 2 fine Zappy starts, and Bill Belichick, for some reason, this went south. He doesn't eclipse Papa Bear George Halas because of a bad Mac Jones game, then tell me that New England won't be going nuts over the concept that Zappy, this isn't Dak Prescott, because Mac Jones has a rookie contract. if Zappe is getting better play out of Bill Belichick's offense, I think Zappe got to come back in the lineup. I just love saying his name.
They're already going crazy. There's a total controversy among the fans and the media. There was all this like negative Mac Jones stuff I didn't even know about. Like Michael Lombardi was putting out there a few weeks ago, the way he was playing and the way he was reacting to coaching and all this stuff. But I would just say from a football vantage point, there is nothing Bailey Zappe did over the last 2 weeks against two of the worst defenses in the league with great protection and great game plans that Mac Jones couldn't have done. And Mac Jones showed so much last year, and I think even a higher level, even in that Ravens game this year, that I don't think they would consider that. And Dan, I'd flip it the other way, or Marc, you too, is that this is another easy matchup. I don't think they would want Zappe to have another great game with Mac on the sidelines. It gets harder. And
that's exactly right,
supposedly, there's been reporting that Mac Jones was quite upset that they wouldn't clear him last week, that he felt ready to go, and he thought last week they were playing it too safe. Not upset, but he was really disappointed. He thought he could play, and he was practicing, and so he's ready to go.
I mean, if you give Zappe 2 or 3 more starts, and he's a crystal gem, you've got major issues to deal with.
They found something, though. They found a nice, at worst, backup quarterback in Zappe.
He was great in college, too.
My final words on this are Zappe ain't no slappy.
That's fitting.
Around the NFL is brought to you by Verizon, the network America relies on.
Let's move to the draft. And the old Zeuser is back with the number 1 overall pick. And I went through the games. I combed through them. And I was going down the list. And I'm like, uh-oh. Am I in my own Luke Jokel, Eric Fisher situation? And then bang, I hit the 4:25 kickoff. Kansas City Chiefs at San Francisco 49ers. That is the first overall pick of the draft. It's an easy one. It is a rematch of the Super Bowl a couple of years back in Miami, or Marc, as you know, the one with J-Lo and Shakira, as you
That's how I identify it, correct.
Right. But here we are now with the Chiefs coming off a stinging loss at home to Buffalo. They traveled to San Francisco, and you know, we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. If you listen to the Power Rings podcast, you know it's really annoying that there's no clear 4th best team in the league. To me, the Chiefs are the clear 3rd best team. I want San Francisco to be the 4th best team in the league. It makes sense that they should be, but I had them dropping down because, Greggy, these injuries can no longer be ignored for San Francisco. They finished Sunday's game with 4 of 11 projected starters on their defense and 11 of 22 overall.
It's crazy.
So they are going through it right now, and you saw the cracks showing, and taking nothing away from Atlanta, but you absolutely saw the cracks showing in week 6.
Yeah, and so they've gotten some good news. This I would say it's definitely good news. Trent Williams and Nick Bosa, 2 of the best players that have been hurt, were back at practice, and so it looks like they're going to be back. Jimmy Ward, who's another important piece of their secondary, was also back. So it looks like they'll get 3 of those players back, but that still means you're missing 7 or 8. One's not coming back, and one of those players that probably is going to be out is Charvarius Ward, who's been really good in the secondary, and this is a secondary game. So Hufanga, your guy,
there we go,
suffered a concussion. And it's really interesting how little attention that's got. He suffered a concussion in the game. He passed the concussion protocol testing on the sidelines. He re-entered the game and finished it. And then he showed up on Monday with severe, or I shouldn't say severe, but he self-reported concussion symptoms. And it sounds like he's not going to play this week, which is basically an admittance that they should not have allowed him to return to the game. And they did. And he suffered a concussion that's now got, more injury to his head. So it's like, yeah, you're playing it safe with the quarterbacks, but no one really cares about the safeties or the whole idea that they're playing it too safe. I don't think that's really happening. You can still fake out these guys, and it's disappointing because I'd love to see Hufanga in this specific game because they're going to need him, and I feel like they have a great defense, a great secondary, but we're not really going to get to see the full secondary against the Chiefs.
It's a shame because this is the best defense in the league right now. I mean, even at this stage, they were giving up 1.16 points per drive, which is the best in the league by a bunch. But they're playing the Chiefs, who score 2.77 per drive, which is best in the league. I kind of love what the Chiefs did against the Bills, seeing Juju Smith-Schuster make big plays start to emerge. They haven't really had the benefit of one of these wide receivers really stepping up. I think it's going to matter in this game. But to me, the acid test is how many Niners players are on defense. I mean, no matter who you are, if you're going to miss 7 or 8 guys, you're so compromised. And what team can you imagine, what coach, what quarterback combination than Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to make use of that?
Yeah, they're averaging just about 30 points a game, Kansas City. So they're going to put up points, obviously. The question becomes, can San Francisco keep pace? And we'll see. Greg, you got on. I heard you in the newsroom on Sunday getting on the San Francisco offense, unable to get into comeback mode. I watched a game. I couldn't totally agree because they had a penalty that wiped out a big play. They had a huge drop by it wasn't Kittle, I believe, is the backup tight end that would have set them up.
Jimmy G played fine, but you still had an 8-minute fourth quarter drive that barely made the red zone.
I understand that. But this offense, it looks like that way until one of the Yak brothers goes, and that's kind of the way they're built. But at the same time, they just scored 14 points and they got shut out in the second half. And that's why you got to feel really good about the Chiefs here against the beaten down defense. This is a game I feel pretty confident the Chiefs are going to take care of business.
Is he going to lock it up?
No. I have a team that I'm way more confident in this week.
You know what? Yes. I am going to, I know they want me to tell them this a long time ago, but I'm going to lock up the Chiefs because I feel good about this situation. There we go. Lock of the week. You know what I don't love about the Niners is I think that certainly with their defense compromised, they are a team that when they play with a lead, and we saw it like when they play the Rams, they get up, they're punishing on defense, and they can run the ball and cause havoc. They're unstoppable. But they have had in 3 games over the last 4 weeks really low returns on their ground game. This isn't a typical Shanahan run attack.
Yeah, they're searching for something.
I think that's their identity. And then the yards after the catch and all the other stuff. Then Jimmy G's in a better place. So I think Kansas City, coming off a loss that they're agitated by, they're going to come out firing.
This feels like the first time Sessler has ever locked against Kyle Shanahan.
It is, but go look at his numbers when he's down late in the third quarter. It's pretty crazy. They're not a comeback team.
Well, check a lot of teams' numbers when they're down late in the third quarter. The stats are probably
his are actually like you would think that Shanahan's would be at least average or fine. They stand out as a big problem and a big hole in his resume, I'd say.
I do think this is a dangerous game for the Chiefs, though, too. I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I would not feel comfortable locking this because I just think the 49ers coming off a loss. I think they're a good team.
Don't tell Marc that.
No, I don't. It doesn't affect my decision at all because I don't even remember who I locked.
The injury report is a big part of it. Like last week, they didn't have their entire defensive line. If they get 2 of them back, including Bosa, that's a big difference. We'll see.
It also can't be Debo or nothing on that offense. So I want to point out also as frustrating as that second half was for San Francisco, Kittle was, on Jimmy G's radar, and Brandon Ayuk got in the end zone twice.
Big game for Ayuk.
I would not feel comfortable here locking up the Chiefs personally, but
we shouldn't do this, Dan. Just let them stay.
No, but this is more fun. You can see the mind at work, the gears turning, the pain.
I don't, because they'll just switch to a better locker. So
I'm with myself also.
Terrible strategy by us. Terrible strategy.
All right. No, it was a great lock, Marc.
I love it.
All right, let's take a break.
It does not sway me one way or the other.
Okay, good.
Alert.
Good. Now we've cornered him into not switching.
Yeah, well now,
a weakness of character.
He just dug in his heels, so we're set. Good job, Gregg. All right, let's take a break, and the draft will roll on. All right, welcome back. The draft rolls on. Greggy on the clock.
Okay, sometimes you got to just draft the draft that's in front of you, and it's important to get a good 125 Pacific game. I'm taking Seahawks Chargers with the second overall pick. Higher than I wanted to, but did not want to get stuck with Texans Raiders, which is the other option there if Dan gets the Jets game. And I really want to watch this game anyways. What am I talking about? Geno versus Justin Herbert, 2 of my absolute favorites, and a game that feels winnable for the Seahawks. Maybe I'm crazy. I'm shocked that they're 6.5-point underdogs in this game. I think the Chargers have a lot of problems. Yes, they could get to their bye week at 5-2, and then it would feel like none of it mattered. And it just that doesn't feel like the path this Chargers team is taking to me. They feel more like a 4-3 type of team at their bye that struggled with a lot of injuries. I was encouraged to see what the Seahawks did defensively a week ago. They did make some changes. They'd been playing this style of defense where they're just trying to hold up blockers up front and let the linebackers make plays behind it. Last week, they came after the Cardinals, and their defensive line, which I thought was going to be good this year, played well. Darrell Taylor has had a great game. Nuoso's been good all year. The defensive tackles with Poona Ford are kind of underrated. Shelby Harris, just gives me a feeling that this Pete Carroll trend, that his defense always starts really bad and then he improved to average, could happen here. And I think average defenses can slow down this Chargers team.
Not buying this.
You're not buying it.
Greggy.
It's wishful thinking. I'm a Seahawks fan now.
Well, here's the thing.
Where we land.
I know your fandom is coloring your analysis here, but that's okay.
I don't think
that happens. Here's the thing. Just be careful because the offense that they shut down last week is broken. It's busted. So that's one thing. But here's the good news.
Okay.
I don't know if the Chargers are that far off under their fearless leader there, Brandon Staley, because that offense we watched on Monday night for the Chargers against Denver was eerily reminiscent of watching Cardinals football, where it just seemed disjointed and they weren't playing to the strengths of their quarterback and so many fruitless drives. I think Seattle's catching Los Angeles and in general the schedule where they have a potential to, yes, build on what they did defensively. They gave up 3 points. They gave up an opening drive field goal, Seattle, against Arizona. I just caution getting too fired up because they were terrible the whole season before that.
Okay.
Terrible.
The players don't seem terrible, though. That's what I don't get. They seem like they have okay talent, and they should have good coaching.
I think if you're Geno Smith, though, if that was sort of the floor game for Geno Smith against the Cardinals.
That is not Geno's floor game.
It might be in this offense, though, because he's given us a lot of evidence that he's going to continue to be successful throwing the ball deep. I love that he's gotten more aggressive in the last couple of weeks. The Chargers allow the 5th most deep passing yards in the league. J.C. Jackson, he was on your list of off-season signings that have gone completely and totally south.
Right, I mean, it's a tough matchup. He's either going to be on DK or Tyler Lockett, assuming he's not benched,
right,
which he was at the end of last game. Their defense improved when
his comments coming out of that game where he was benched. Talk to me about a player who neck up is in a tough place right now. And I think this is a good spot for Geno Smith. And the defense, I don't know if what we saw last week against the Cardinals. I'm with Dan. I would tend to think that's more of an aberration than the way forward for Seattle's defense, just based on the other 5 games they've played this season.
It's fair.
We'll see.
I mean, but even if they just hold teams in the 20s, then this Seahawks offense, I think, will be better, and this is a route to possibly winning games. Brandon Staley, I think, he's just starting to lose a little support, I feel like, from the media, which has generally been a fan of his. I have been. Marc has been, at least on our show. And part of the reason, not just the game management, which is weird sometimes, but the defense has been disappointing. And yes, they are missing key players, and maybe that's part of it, but they've been disappointing. They're a mediocre defense again, Dan, and that's not this was supposed to be kind of a super team. They've lost a lot of great players, and maybe we should give them more of a pass, but when you see...
Isn't it weird, though?
Yeah.
Isn't it weird how we're all down on the Chargers? Because there's also a vision of what we, and not just us, but a lot of people in the football cognoscente expect them to be, which is this fun, high-flying offense, and they're not. And yet they've won 3 games in a row. They're 4-2. But I don't think anybody is buying in on the Bolts right now. But that said, they're at home. They're against a Seattle team that's been surprising. Obviously, Geno in the offense has really played well pretty much all season. The defense is coming off their best game. But Los Angeles is going to be favored here. They should win the game. And then they've won 5 of 7 to start the season. And yet, I don't know. I think just the feeling, the vibe around this.
You're about to lock it up.
No. I really think as much as I was just downplaying Seattle's defensive performance. I think, like I said, the Chargers offense has not been the same since Justin Herbert's rib injury. Statistically, I don't even know if that's necessarily what it's about. I think there are more things in play here with Los Angeles. So seems like a spot, Greg, where you could be excited on Sunday night talking about your Seahawks again.
And not only will
go to the game.
Right. I'm going to enjoy this game. I think Gino's more ready to test the secondary downfield than Herbert, it's just thinking Doug right now. And that's why I am at least going to drop some rain on SoFi Stadium. The roof is going to be open. It's coming in sideways on Sunday afternoon. And you said it's going to be a home game for the Chargers? I don't think so. The 12s are showing up, and it's going to be a home game
Dan,
for the
I'm
Seahawks.
sitting about 2 feet from Greg in a different seat than normal, and he is just shouting, and his face is growing redder and redder as a tomato
You
would.
give me the Seahawks as 6.5-point dogs. We already took this route in week 1 this year, and we're undefeated. It's been raining.
You know, Marc, or you don't know, but I'd love you to try it one day. The power chair, which is the chair that faces the producer and the production team, which is typically my chair. It's very dangerous to put Greg in that chair. And I understand.
Think we know that, yeah.
And I think that there's a situation at play here where we just need to be careful, and why I need to race back to Los Angeles.
He is a magnet to power.
Can.
We know that whenever he comes close to power, it's like a tractor beam.
A ridiculous theory.
It is completely unfair.
Me and all my friends are jerks.
Marc Sessler, the 3rd overall pick, goes to you.
All right, I'm going to take my late game, which is the Houston Texans at the Las Vegas Raiders. I know that does not feel very...
Wait, what's your real pick?
That is.
What's your real pick?
Well, I have a pick after this, too.
But literally, that's the only game there that's even left for you to
Before you
take.
go down your little avenue of commenting on my game before I even comment on it, I will tell you why I'm taking this. The Raiders are a wounded animal right now. Here's what I love about what they've done the last couple of weeks. They went from a team trying to figure out what to do with Derek Carr in the passing game to a ground and pound. They had 212 yards against the Broncos, a good defense, 155 against the Chiefs. I think they're going to come out and continue this approach under Josh McDaniels, who wants to win the games on the ground and puts Derek Carr in a better spot. Houston is a sitting duck in this thing. They can't do anything on offense outside of Dameon Pierce. This is where the Raiders turn their season around in my book.
They're going to win some games here. The schedule really softens up for
time.
Las Vegas. I think they are a team that will be in the mix in the playoffs, but you got to start winning games now. And I think coming off a bye, knowing the urgency, this is another game. I think we could see, I don't want it to be, but you know what? There's been so much parity and so many close games. This could be a week where I think we see some one-sided games. I think this is another one. I think this is a game where and I don't know where the Desert Makers come down on this, Greg. You can let me know.
It's at 7.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't lock this.
This one to me has 30 to 14 written all over it. I think the Raiders are the better team. I don't think the Raiders by any stretch have been bad this year. They've been bad at closing out games. That's been their issue. And I don't think Houston's going to be able to keep up with them in this environment.
They've lost to the Chargers by 5, the Cardinals by 6, the Titans by 2, and the Chiefs game, that was a heartbreaker by 1. I mean, they're the team that's going to come out and explode because they've lost too many tight, close games that have put them in a wayward place in the West. I don't think the West is out of control to get a wild card spot if they come roaring back.
I get it, but I feel weird that we all agree so much that I'm worried. But I really do find what they did on their offensive line, which has looked so bad for so long, really encouraging. It really looks like a Josh McDaniels type of offense, and Davis Mills just can't shoot straight. He's not an accurate quarterback. There just hasn't been a lot of juice there. When it gets past 10 yards, he doesn't get it. The only thing that would give me a little pause is Dameon Pierce. Is he a top 5 running back in the NFL right now? I mean, I might.
Whoa.
I mean,
well, a lot of the numbers suggest he is, especially the yards after contact.
The way he runs, if you give him a little space, runs through people, but also the cuts he makes against this Raiders defense, which hasn't been great. Like, you could see him having a big game and at least keep it.
I mean, if the Raiders drop this game,
he's been outrageous, Danny.
If
he
the
might
Raiders,
be a rookie of the
year. If the
year.
Raiders drop this game, you have got major issues in the desert with Josh McDaniels. You cannot lose this thing. They're not losing this thing.
I think their running back has been excellent. He had that long touchdown run that pads your stats a little bit, but he's had multiple weeks now where he's proven to be the guy that should be the workhorse of their offense. But if you shut him down, like we had Nick Wessling, who we'll be hearing from, I believe, coming up in a bit. He had a buddy connected to Houston, like asking, hey, what's the deal with Davis Mills? He is kind of what he is. He's had 5 games with a sub 100 passer rating. And if he does not put together a stretch of really good football, it feels like mortal lock territory that Houston uses a first-round pick on a quarterback. It might not matter, quite honestly.
I think they've already made that decision, I would imagine.
All right, you now, Marc Sessler. Snakes to you, buddy.
I'm going to pick the team that is most intriguing to me in the league right now. And if I were to pick a new favorite team, going back to my childhood roots, this might be my choice. The New York Giants going down to Jacksonville. And I know everyone's still.
I wanted this game. You stole it from me.
Well, there aren't a lot of great premier matchups this week. But this one, to me, it's like, so I'm going to pick one team I care about at least. The Jaguars try to win me over. We'll see. But this, to me, is just another continuation in the Giants' journey. They're so well coached. I want to see Wink Martindale go after Trevor Lawrence. That's what he did against Lamar Jackson last week. They went nuts applying pressure to Lamar Jackson. And, statistically, their defense does not really measure up in a lot of ways. But then you're getting guys like Kayvon Thibodeau, our friend. He I don't know if he knows he's our friend.
Best friend.
Good friend.
I think he's like my friend still because I wasn't here for that atom bomb that you guys.
I think we probably.
No, you're the only one.
Yeah,
you're the only one we know for a fact, Gregg, is not friends because you asked him in a very awkward way.
That was a separate, fun little.
But I think we probably
that.
wiped out your situation as much as anyone else's, Gregg. I don't think you'd be winning any battles.
Here's one thing I know is that he can't tell us apart, so it doesn't really matter that I wasn't there.
That may be true. But 2 weeks in a row, because if you go back to the end of that Packers game in London, one of those fateful tipped passes of Aaron Rodgers went off of Thibodeau. Last week he had a huge play against Lamar Jackson, a big turnover that changed that game. So not unlike the Jets, they have a couple of young players on both sides of the ball that are showing up. It's just there's such a one-sided offense because their passing numbers and their wide receiver group is a total mess. So they're getting creative, at least with Daboll. It's like direct snaps to Saquon, who then hands it off to Daniel Jones, who prepares. It's like they're doing Daboll's going into his bag.
Wait a second. Speaking of the desert, how are the Jags favored by a field goal in this game?
I felt this was a lockable one for the Giants.
Unless I'm looking at bad data here, how is it possible that Jacksonville is favored in this game?
So these teams each get kind of like a baseline Vegas number. Like the Jaguars are just like against an average team are like worth a point, and the Giants are worth -2 points or whatever based on their season. And that's based on their performance, points scored, points allowed, which the Jaguars still look good, and a lot of the underlying analytics of like how effective the offense has been moving the ball, turnover margin, how effective the defense has been. And in all those numbers, the Giants are inferior to the Jaguars. They profile as a mid-level team. The Jaguars profile is slightly better, and they're at home. But it's kind of like they're begging everyone to take the Giants, and they're trusting their numbers and seeing, because everyone will take the Giants.
I don't want to, because I know this makes you seem someone who should never be taken serious on any level where we are with sports, but like, that's why the game's not played on spreadsheets. Like Vegas should be paying attention to the way the Giants close these games.
But it's also why Vegas, wins is for the most part,
tell me,
they have a formula
so do you believe this?
Serves them over time. No, I think the Giants are like a better team, but I understand the headwinds that they're sort of putting that number at in such a way that they believe these teams are equal, and they kind of probably in this one know everyone's going to take the Giants, and they'll take their chances.
Sure.
I sort of disagree, but I also picked the Jaguars to win this game online, so I'm lying.
Oh, you're boxed in a little bit. Yeah. I think, Marc, from my angle on it is the way the league is right now, where it's a big three and let's see on everything else. It matters the way the Giants have played these games and the way they've been coached and the way their game plan has been rolled out. That with all these teams kind of at a similar place, like I'm not saying that Jacksonville is grossly inferior talent-wise. You could definitely make the case they have better talent. But in Jacksonville, you've had a very inconsistent team that's been up and down, a quarterback play very up and down, and a Giant team that has showed you week after week so far exactly who they are. I don't think that's going to stop. I think this is, especially in our league and where things are, I think you're going to see the Giants playing close games all year and winning close games all year. I see this as an 11-6 team.
I'm with you. I mean, I think in general, you look at the league on whole, the average margin of victory is 8.9 points per game, which is the lowest ever in the NFL. And so I really don't have a big problem with this spread per se. I think they're not factoring in the way that we feel about the Giants. The Giants make us feel a certain way because not unlike the Jets.
Feel a way.
Well, they do. They flipped entirely who they are, and every week you can point to.
I'm a little too close to you right now.
You can point to Wink Martindale. You can point to Brian Dable that they really have been coached so well, and the team is totally bought in. I don't think that's totally untrue of Jacksonville, but they're not where the Giants are.
No, but I saw some good things last week. You know, Trevor Lawrence's highs aren't that high, which is unfortunate. For the most part, his lows, other than in the rain, aren't that low, I don't think either. I think these two quarterbacks are similar in that way. That's where you can really say that Brian Dable's done a fantastic job, is that he's coached Daniel Jones to not have lows, despite a tough situation. Sure. They've been very reliable, but I think Lawrence has been reliable. The difference is I trust Dable to attack the opposing defense's weaknesses more. And the Eagles put Devin Lloyd, who everyone wants to talk about as a Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate, in a blender in that game. And I noticed last week the Colts did too. They're just targeting his over-aggressiveness and killing him with running backs and tight ends in coverage. And Saquon Barkley can definitely kill you as a receiver. Darius Williams was another guy they handed a lot of money to who's really struggling. So the Jaguars defense has some weaknesses, and I think Dable is good at attacking those weaknesses.
Yeah. If the Jaguars bring their quote-unquote A game at home, they should win. I feel like it's more likely that you get another consistent, solid effort by New York. By the way, we're talking New York or northern New Jersey. We're talking about Duval. But why don't we head over to the Cincinnati Zoo?
Hey, heroes. Oh, no. No surprise after last week living on the streets. I'm a little under the weather. It's okay, though, because these games aren't worth me getting out of bed for. There are two 6.5-point favorites, the Bengals and the Ravens. Can't wait to see which ones Dan and Gregg lock up. It's okay. I'm going to add a little spice this week. Everyone keeps talking about the Giants. Worst 3-1 team in the league. Worst 4-1 team in the league. Worst 5-1 team in the league. These are the New York Football Giants. And they're taking on the Jaguars. That's for you, Dan. The reason the Giant people talk about the football Giants like they're not that good is because they aren't. And the Jags are going to expose them for the imposters they are. Ooh. Lock it up. Look at that, 59 seconds.
That's a bold lock. I don't know if you got full buy-in from the other brothers on that one.
I always like his lock explanations because I never know who he's taking until the very end. It never supports the case he's got to make. But he did take your note, Dan. I think you asked for him to be under a minute, and he did it. 50 minutes.
And if there's any pushback against old Zeuser on that, it's not that I'm trying to rush the man, but I think a more concise message could lead to even better entertainment value. And I just thought, that shot in particular, and please watch us on NFL Network and NFL Plus, YouTube, wherever you can get this show. Just for the value of that overhead shot of Nick Wessling, please tune in.
I mean, I'm just concerned because there's been a lot of infighting between that group, and you look right here, he's clearly heavily medicated. Yeah. And he's just locked up the Jaguars.
Suddenly, we've got Scorsese directing Nick's hits. It's just very artistic with this view.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the brothers are even connected at this point.
I don't think so.
Nick has just drifted off as a satellite, and
reach out to us. If other Wesley brothers that are at all paid attention. I don't know if Phil listens. Phil, let us know if you're happy with this.
All right, let's take a break, and we will move on.
I'm taking Lions Cowboys with the next pick.
All right.
In this draft, and
there aren't a lot of gems here in this draft. Let's not act like this is like the game of the century.
I get it. It's the team of ATL.
It's a team of ATL.
Coming off a bye at a moment where it's put up or shut up time. It's kind of like you got to show up, and you're in a brutally difficult spot here going against the Cowboys, who I think are a top 5 team in a very watered down NFL. They'd be in my top 5 because of their defense. And because the offense has shown enough to believe that with Dak Prescott back, that they'll be an average, maybe an above average offense. And with that defense in this NFL, I think that's all they'll need. Dak Prescott is expected to start in this game. The Cowboys, sending out a thumbs up creatively on Twitter, and he's practicing fully. So it looks like it's all systems go, and he's going up against a Lions defense that's still banged up. They were missing 9 starters in practice on Wednesday coming off their bye. It's like you hope that the bye magically heals people, but it's only 1 week. They will get Amon-Ra St. Brown back. It looks like he's practicing, and DeAndre Swift back. So those are the 2 most important guys on their offense, along with Jared Goff. And so that gives them a chance. I just don't know what's going to happen in this game. I tend to think that it's going to be a Cowboys game, and maybe they'll even cover the 7-point spread here. But I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping the Lions do it. You've had doubts about this Lions team, Dan, coming off a bye now. You think they'll respond? This is the time where you surprise us.
The doubts have always been about the defense, obviously, and that has really played out. And the concern was, what if the offense comes down to earth? And we saw what happened in New England. They got this bye week to reset. I'm going to speak positively about Detroit. They got the bye week to reset some things, get some guys, if not 100% healthy, healthier, closer, having Swift back and St. Brown getting, some break. That's important. And I think this is a very important week for Dan Campbell, like a proof of concept type game for him and his Grit Warriors, because Dallas, as good as their defense is, I imagine Dak's going to have rust. I don't think this is that offense that's going to, you slide in Dak Prescott and they're off to the races. Remember what they looked like in week 1 before he got hurt against Tampa. There was a lot of moving pieces and they hadn't figured things out. Like we talked about last week, Michael Gallup's back, but he doesn't look like Michael Gallup. So there are reasons to believe Dallas will not score a lot of points. The question is Jared Goff, who's 0-8-1 in his last 9 road games, going to face this defense. Micah Parsons, this could be one of those games where everybody's talking about him on Monday. So I'm worried about the Lions, but I don't think Dallas is going to score a ton of points, which should keep them in the game. We shall see.
I don't think that if the Lions lose, it really changes much that we think about them.
Be competitive at least.
They need to be that.
Can't get blown out here.
No, they can't get blown out. I love the fact that Swift is back. I think if you want to give Jared Goff a chance in this, it can't be one of these games where he has got someone in his face left and right, because he starts to unravel. And I think that what the Patriots did to them and took away their run game, other teams are going to try to do. And I think the Cowboys, we talked about the Niners as the best defense in the league. It may be Dallas. And Dallas is, you can run on Dallas here and there, but Detroit's going to have to make plays through the air, and they're going to have to keep Jared Goff safe. And Jared Goff under pressure, to me, is a completely different quarterback.
I just think the Cowboys have a lot of dimensions to them this year. I think the offensive line has gotten better. I think the running game's a little better than I expected. And you mentioned the defense, the way Dan Quinn has continuity and he changes things from week to week. Now they really are built, because they have veterans, to adopt a creative game plan and do what Belichick did and kind of send that pressure and have the big bear front where you got 5 defensive linemen up front to stuff that running game, and then you send surprising people like Goff. They can kind of do it all. They can go tempo too offensively. I just think they have a lot in their back pocket.
Let's move back to the old Zoo, sir. Yes, I will take Jets at Denver Broncos, Mile High Stadium. Here's the latest on Russell Wilson. Shoulder, that's an ongoing thing. I guess hamstring, an ongoing thing. What is he listed at? Oh, they don't have the injury designations out yet.
Sounds like he'll play. He's practicing again. And he mentioned he had Wolverine blood. That's why he's healing so fast.
Well, Marc, you and I were talking to a birdie in the newsroom that pointed out, he went out of his way to let the media know about these injuries. So it's not like this is something that's coming out from the team, these different maladies that Russ is dealing with. And you could take that info and think nothing of it, or just think, is this a quarterback making some excuses for being statistically, in many ways, the worst QB in football this year? There's an immense amount of pressure on the Broncos to start putting some stuff together here. It is an offense that is not getting better. It is, you watch that 10 for 10 start and the touchdown pass to Dulcich, and you think maybe something's cooking, and then things just got worse and worse and worse. And here's the bad news. And for those fans at Mile High, except for the Jets fans, because they traveled really well to Green Bay, and I wonder if we're going to see a lot of green in the stands on Sunday. The Jets defense is not going to be friendly to Russell Wilson, who can't pick up blitzes, who doesn't spot receivers that are open, that flash open quickly. Quinnen Williams is absolutely playing. I don't know if we've heard this yet. We're hearing Pro Bowl, All-Pro. He keeps this up. He's going to be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Quinnen Williams is an absolute game wrecker right now. And Sauce Gardner, what he's doing, what we're getting all across on all three levels of the Jets defense, their ability to get pressure without blitzing, that is going to be a huge issue for Russell Wilson in this game. So I don't know if I'm sure I've done it, boys, but it's been a long time.
Is he going to do it?
Oh, I
this. Believe the Jets are going to give the Russell Wilson Broncos offense absolute fits, and that's going to be enough for me to lock up the Jets. Keith Hanzus is somewhere in the house right now. I know he hears it. The Jets are going to win this game. I was rewatching the game before we started taping today, and I was counting Zach Wilson mistakes in the first half, and it was going 1, 2, 3, whether it's sliding early or a badly placed pass or whatever it was. He's the one concerned with New York, because if he puts it together and really does take that step, the Jets can hang with almost anybody in the AFC. But we need to see that step. But I think it's the defense that's going to carry them to yet another win.
I mean, it's impressive to see Quinnen Williams, how he impacted the game of Aaron Rodgers a week ago. And their faulty offensive line, the issues they were having, that he took passes away from Rodgers that would have changed that thing. And so I'm with you. He's having a fantastic season. I'm watching the Broncos, and Gregg, you mentioned this after the Monday night game. I cannot really remember a team like this with a quarterback situation like this where it's unfolding in such a public fashion, and it's almost uncomfortable to watch, especially when it's been games in Denver Stadium where there is a fair debate, because it's like Russell Wilson is playing
him in his first game,
right?
And
I mean, Russell Wilson is playing the worst football of his career, but it's possible to look at what's going on with Nathaniel Hackett and the entire organization of the offense and say, which one is it? I think it's so clearly a terrible mixture of both. And the Jets absolutely keep finding these teams at the right time. They put the Packers into total chaos where Aaron Rodgers has to talk about simplifying the offense. I mean, the Broncos offense, we're hearing people talk about their protections, other aspects of it being run at a sub-pro NFL level. And it doesn't help that Russell Wilson seems to have completely lost his ability to see the field, and it's starting to feel like infighting, and teammates, others, are so disappointed with what's going on that the Jets right here, who are riding as high of a magic carpet ride as anyone in the league, I already locked him up, but I think it's a great spot for the Jets.
Can I push back on one thing, Gregg, Marc, that you're saying the Jets have found teams at the right time? I think this is the landscape of the league, and that's why part of the reason why I have so much optimism about this Jets season. I know they're not the Bills. I know they're not the Chiefs, but you catch any team, and the team's probably dealing with some type of issues. Hell, the Jets were when Zach Wilson nearly blew out his ACL and they were playing Joe Flacco for a month. Like, the Jets are just attacking their schedule and picking up W's.
The Jets still are, and that issue is Zach Wilson. Now, I got to see multiple bad weeks until you get overly concerned, but there was a stat like his expected points added as a quarterback was one of the lowest in any single victory by a team in the last 5-6 years. He had a rough game, and even though he's had good moments, he's very unpredictable. Like, when he drops back, you're not sure what's going to happen, and this is an incredible test. We keep throwing around who's the best defense in the league. Cowboys, 49ers. The Broncos are absolutely in that mix. They are doing everything well. They're the number one pass defense in the league, DVOA. They just added their all-pro Justin Simmons back into the mix. There's a couple spots there where they're thin, but they, like a lot of these teams, are very versatile because they play three safeties. Caden Stearns played outstanding early in the season, and they have Kareem Jackson. And their pass rush is awesome. Baron Browning's been a revelation. Bradley Chubb's having the best season of his career. And then Draymond DJ Jones. This is a really good defense, and that's one of the things that's crazy about them being 2-4.
Well, it's the most wasted defense we've seen.
They're number one right now in DVOA and defense. I'm not saying they're like so dominant that the Jets won't be able to run on them and make some plays. Like, no defense is that dominant, but it's a really good defense, and you would expect them to create some chaos for Zach Wilson, and that's the route. And that's why, as bad as it's been for the Broncos, all these games they lose by 3 points. It's not like they're getting blown out. You're going to be most likely, I think, Dan, sweating out this lock, even though I'm with you, and I think the Jets will win.
I think it's just time for me to go all the way in and get behind them. I just like the spot. And part of the reason was watching Monday night, those third downs, whether it was third and medium, third and long, the complete inability for the scheme. Forget about just Wilson, who struggles.
That's coaching.
The scheme,
well,
that guys coming in unblocked, every third down dropback was absolutely doomed. And I just think it sets up well for a New York defense playing really well. I will now snake it. And I like to hurt. I like to hurt people. I like to hurt my friends. And that's what I'm about to do.
Weird.
Not in life, but in this game.
Weird.
I like to really stick it in the ribs and then twist, because I know both of you were hoping Atlanta at Cincinnati would fall to you. And yet it will not. Come on, be honest. Be honest.
I'm a little peeved at you taking that game, but I'm over it. I'm getting over it currently.
I can't say I'm like that disappointed.
Listen, the Bengals offense in a very unsettled league, I really enjoyed watching Joe Burrow, and I've enjoyed him the last couple of weeks as they've been cleaning up their offensive line play and T. Higgins getting healthier and back on the field. And all of a sudden, oh, right, this is Cincinnati. This is that offense. And I just get the feeling and the vibe that Burrow and Jamar and T and Mixon, who looked better last week, are about to go off and win a bunch of games and score a lot of points. I really like them in the spot at home against Atlanta. And that's not taking anything away from the Falcons. I know you guys are higher on general on the Arthur Smith era than me. I'm still more like wait and see. They're definitely better than they were a year ago. They beat San Francisco, which is a really nice win, obviously. But like I said earlier, the Niners were decimated by injuries. So I don't know if we're seeing 28 more points from the Falcons, and I think we get that from Cincinnati. This one feels to me like a 31-17 Cincinnati victory.
I mean, except that Atlanta's scored week after week, and they found a way back into games. And if you look at the way that they're playing, you get enough from Marcus Mariota, and if you get him on the ground, they're running for like 200-plus yards a game and dominating defensive lines with not a great offensive line, actually. That's why I think they're so well coached under Arthur Smith. And if you look at the Bengals, they have been gashed on the ground 2 weeks in a row. So I see an opportunity for Atlanta to do what they want to do on offense and attack the way they want to attack. But Dan, you're right. I mean, if you take away that week one result for Joe Burrow, I mean, he's really been mistake-free in terms of giveaways. He's got like 2 picks or something like that. And you saw the big plays are starting to creep up. And if you get Burrow and Jamar Chase the way you did last week, they talk about the fact that Jamar Chase, for teams that haven't faced him yet, that on the field when you deal with him, he's a completely different, surprising entity than he is on tape. And I think that element of surprise for the Bengals is still there. They're growing into who they were last year to some degree. I don't know if they're that spicy, but it is a huge test for a Falcons team that I find to be as fun to watch as any in the league right now.
Yeah, I struggle with the Bengals. I want to say they turned some corner, and I was expecting that. And then when I watch that game, I don't feel like they've turned any corner. I don't think their offensive line's playing well at all. Like, their only plays are Joe Burrow get the ball out of his hand in like 1 second, so there is no offensive line, or they're great players, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Burrow, make just great individual plays. They either break tackles, or they make an insane catch, or they make an insane run, and that's great. They have great players.
Wasn't he having to do that behind the line last year, though,
I guess so, but it felt a little more consistent. They didn't have a running game. I don't think they're well coached. And then the Bengals defense, which had started off the season so well, I think you can push them around a little bit, and this is the wrong team to play when you can get pushed around. To me, I see these teams as another 2 teams in the middle. I don't see them, like, because people do power rankings, Dan, you have to pick a team that's like has potential and is higher. And to me, these are two very much in the middle teams. The Bengals have shown nothing other than what they did a year ago to believe that they're any different than any of
let
these
me
teams.
throw some stats out there because
Okay.
your field test says Cincinnati is not getting much better. Burrow has a 110 passer rating since week 3, third in the NFL. He has 5 interceptions this year, only 1 since week 1.
He's been better.
Right.
They have 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions against man coverage. They've won 3 of 4 after starting 0-2. Joe Burrow, you might not see it with the offensive line, Greg, but Joe Burrow has went out of his way after these games to say that the offensive line is improving and it's helping his game. And I just think I'm not saying they're a perfect team. And what you're saying about the power rankings is true. Do I think Cincinnati's a top 5 team almost any other year? No, they're kind of like a 10 to 13 type team, but the league is what the league is right now. And I saw certain things being unlocked with their offense, especially yesterday. The defense, yes, they're vulnerable there potentially. But I've just seen enough personally to say, I can see the Bengals really getting hot here in the middle of the season.
I'm with you because I think that, had things continued to pace after week 1 or week 2, you're in panic mode because it looked like Joe Burrow wouldn't last the season.
It's all
right
fair.
now, it's like this is a process. And we're talking about the entire league looking mezzanine level outside of 2 or 3 teams. The Bengals at least are trending back to where they were a year ago. My difference is Joe Mixon, 4th most carries in the league, 17th in yardage because he's running at 3.3 yards per carry. I know he's had a couple better games here, but they were dominant down the stretch last year because, especially in their own division, Mixon in the ground game would punish teams and tire out defenses. They're not able to do that right now.
I just think in this muddled NFL, sometimes we assign a lot to wins and losses. That is the point. But have they really played? Like, they lost a couple heartbreakers early, and we assigned a lot that things are falling apart, and now they're winning a couple heartbreakers for the other teams late, and we're assigning a lot to that. And to me, they seem in the middle, and I think coaching is more important than ever. I always would say there's only 5 or 6 coaching staffs that matter on one side, good and bad, but I don't know, with so little separating these teams this year, I think coaching has mattered more. I found it interesting. The Falcons aren't blitzing much anymore. That's what you think of them as, but they've really adapted, and they're different. And I look at this 6.5-point spread, and like a couple of 6.5-point spreads this week, I'm like, that seems crazy to me. These teams seem absolutely even, and that's why it's going to be rated in Cincinnati too. The Rainmaker doesn't come out twice in a week very often, but he is this week. We're taking the Falcons 6.5. I love it. This thing's coming down to the end.
Dan, this is a chore sitting here today. I'm telling you.
Hey, listen, the power chair. Some people can handle the power, and
No,
some
this
people
person cannot.
Some listeners were like, you haven't done a Rainmaker in 3 weeks. So I was like, okay, I got to make up some. And I do feel strong about these two. I love getting that many points with a feisty, frisky team.
We'll be tracking that very closely. And if, God forbid, your 2 Rainmakers don't hit, I'm sure that Marc and I won't be bringing it up on the show.
I just gave Dan one more thing to root heavily for on Sunday, so you're welcome.
Again, I like to hurt my friends, but only in scenarios like this. Another example, Gregg's Rainmaker. That would be fun to celebrate sunshine.
I mean, the record over the last 2 years is getting to be ridiculous. I think it's 12-4 or something outrageous. We're on a hot heater.
Well, you've had a lot of practice over the years, Gregg, in this realm, and you're really doing well, and we thank you. Gregg, you're up.
Oh, I am. I'm going to take the Browns and the Ravens. I feel weird with Marc sitting next to me, taking the Browns back-to-back weeks, but we're deep in the draft, and I'm just not
I wouldn't have done that to you, Marc.
Yeah, you could have.
I wouldn't have done it.
I could have grabbed that.
You could have taken it with that 3rd overall pick, Marc. That was just open, that slot.
I could have taken Colts, Titans, and that's great. I don't know. There's so many loyalties here. I'm loyal to football, and I am interested in this game. I mean, isn't this a big game?
Did you just say that with a straight face? I'm loyal to football.
I'm just saying I'm loyal to making the best Sunday. I think this is a great game at this point in each of these 2 teams' season. I think it's a very compelling game. I find both these teams compelling and confusing. The Ravens are such a strange 3-3 team. The Browns are a strange 2-4 team. They both feel like they should be better than they are, but one of these 2 teams is going to be devastated after this loss and in a really difficult spot that they didn't expect. I want to think that the Ravens can punish the disorganized Browns defense, because this team's given up a lot of big plays. In theory, that's what Lamar should do. Looks like they get Rashad Bateman back this week. But then Mark Andrews is out of practice Wednesday and Thursday. And it's like they're just too thin. It's crazy how they don't have anyone but Andrews and kind of Devin Duvernay when Bateman was out. Now Bateman's back. That's not enough. Like, no other receivers are getting involved. And yes, I think they found something with Kenyon Drake last week running the ball. He looked good. J.K. Dobbins is out of practice. I get the feeling they might sit him down for a minute. He just never looked right this season coming off his injury. And maybe they're just going to give him a couple weeks off with that injury and just see if he can get a little more juice. Kenyon Drake's something, but they're an inconsistent offense. And you mentioned it, Mark, like, Lamar has 5 fourth-quarter interceptions. Turnovers, 4 interceptions.
Yeah.
They said something like, I think he only had 6 in his entire career until this year. Like, something strange here. And he's definitely not playing at the level he was in the first 3 weeks.
No, I'm with you. I mean, he's fallen off a cliff in a lot of ways, but the turnovers have been absolutely critical. And this is your game, though, if you're the Ravens, now that you have Bateman back, because I'm with you. They always seem like if they're missing one weapon, they don't look like other NFL teams in terms of their skill position players.
They better get Andrews back, because he's even more important.
Well, I think he's the core of their passing game. But if you can't run against the Browns, if you can't get plays against Cleveland, that would be more concerning for me than anything about the Ravens, because the Browns defense right now, I think, is a bottom 3 unit. It is Myles Garrett playing out of his mind week after week, and nobody else. And it's like they're not the sum of their parts, because there's talent on this defense. But it's funny because, like, John Johnson, their safety this week, I thought he had some pretty revealing comments about the fact that, this isn't a team that after practice people are sticking around, logging more hours. It's like kind of a get in your car and go home situation. And I kind of wonder.
53 men, 53 cars.
It's not necessarily that they don't like each other. It's like, are they putting in the work? Is it all hands on deck after what we've seen from this defense? They should be making adjustments, changing what they're doing. And they've been discombobulated and out of sorts week after week. So if the Ravens can't do it here, then I'd be real concerned about the Ravens from that angle.
Well, that's the thing. The Ravens are annoying. The Ravens are in tugboat timeout right now.
I think that's fair.
Because it's just like, guys, what are we doing here? Like that, they've blown now 3 games with a 10-point lead. That's tied their franchise record in the second half, and that's through week 6. And you just want to you're looking the way things are right now in this unsettled league to grab onto things, teams that you could trust. In Baltimore, I've lost 2 locks. Both of my locks this year are getting behind the Ravens in games that they have in hand and blow. And it's just like, what is that about? And I think there's 2 things. You could definitely point the finger at some coaching mistakes that are happening, but it's right. And I'm glad, Gregg, because I know you and Claybon and others are always looking out for Lamar, but he has absolutely played a role in these collapses, especially against Buffalo, obviously against the Giants. And he needs to be better. And you could say he doesn't have a lot of supporting parts, but the great ones, they find a way to get it done. Look at what we're seeing from Mahomes in Kansas City. And we see Lamar, maybe he's not Mahomes in that all-time level, but if he's truly a superstar that's going to get paid the highest contract ever for a quarterback, well, he should be able to make it work. Maybe he shouldn't have traded Hollywood Brown. I don't know, but that's the past. You need Rashad Bateman to hit the ground running. I expect this to be one-sided for the Ravens, but again, after 3 games, blowing games, and letting teams back in games, it's like, I don't know what to expect.
Look, to be clear, Lamar overall is the reason why this team has a good offense. And of course he deserves that contract, because like Kyler Murray gets those contracts. Like he's at another level than that. He's going to get it. He's just got to clean up his passing. It's just been a little inconsistent. I think the reason they lose this game is because unlike other Ravens teams, their weaknesses are really weak. They have no edge rushers. I mean, they signed JPP off the street, play him every snap, and he didn't show up in the stat sheet. Like, their offensive line has been really injured, but I do think they're coming together. Ronnie Stanley's played well for them the last 2 weeks, and they've improved the last couple weeks. So certain things have come together while certain things have fallen apart in terms of giving up big plays defensively and like being really thin at receivers. Their weaknesses are weak, and yet I'm stepping into that trap too, like you did, Dan. You've gotten a couple Ravens wrong. I got it wrong last week, but then I jumped out of it at the last second. But this time I'm jumping right back in. I'm locking up the Ravens.
Be careful. That's all I'm going to say.
I think you're in safe territory.
They
I
don't-
mean, you're going to have to count on the fact that the Browns, when they've been good on offense, like if Nick Chubb does Nick Chubb things, that they'll keep it close. But Wyatt Teller is out. I think that's a big loss for Cleveland's offensive line. I don't see Baltimore getting stopped by Cleveland in this game.
The
I like
vibes
your
are
lock.
bad in Cleveland.
They
just, not to get too stupid.
And I don't.
God,
I know
bad.
Kevin Stefanski does not listen to our show during the season. He's an every show listener in the off season.
That's right.
But just in case somebody can get this to him, I was saying give Nick Chubb the ball more. You gave it to him 12 times last week. I know the game script, blah, blah, blah. Give the ball to Nick Chubb 30 times and see what's going on in the fourth quarter.
Is he in a tugboat timeout?
Who? No. Well, there's only one tugboat timeout per any given time in the league.
Imagine if Dan put
Ravens
one
are
of
in
us
right now.
in a tugboat timeout at some point.
Well,
like
it sounds
It's happened.
It sounds like less work. We just wouldn't come to the show.
Why do you think I'm in New York?
It's actually happening,
It's
guys.
actually
It's
happening.
here.
I also like the Drake London call because, well, fight on. But also I think he gets a lot of targets all day long. Just be able to sit down and just watch football, watch fantasy points rack up.
Naheem Hines to the moon.
It's Hines season, baby.
Yes. Is there a waiver wire target that we should feel really confident to go out and get it done for us today, Florio?
Yeah, I mentioned some tight ends earlier. So listen,
I'm just asking. There it is. This is what normally happens here.
Woo! Welcome to Benched with Bonetta.
I like Hard Knocks brain. Every single year, I will follow the Hard Knocks team into the seventh circle of hell.
The collapse, epic.
The
Looks
hallway
like you're already
of the jail.
in a jail
man.
cell.
The opposite of a blow up, like a dim down.
God, I can't wait for this game.
Welcome back inside with the Insiders. Tom Pelissero here with Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo.
Two things stood out to me. One, Josh Allen's still great. Two, Ken Dorsey, the new offensive coordinator, looked pretty awesome.
You know, I said that coming out, it was good news for it to be the cartilage and not a broken rib.
I'm BA, I want a Super Bowl. I deserve a suite, and they won't give you a suite. Well, you're not going to sit in a press box seat. Give this man a suite.
It's time for Battles One presented by the United States Marine Corps.
How about we snake Cess Dog?
All right, I'm going to go Colts at Titans. Kind of surprised this is still hanging around.
Me too.
I know, Gravedigger. I feel the same way that Dan feels. Like this is something you're going to have eyes on. So maybe I'm picking in lieu of you handling the work side of this. We will decide. But I think
Very well done.
If you look back at how they dealt, how the Titans beat the Colts the first time, 24-17, a couple weeks back. The Titans didn't have a player with more than 38 yards receiving, but it was one of our indicators that Derrick Henry, I think, is having. I mean, he looks good. And that was a game where they also hassled Matt Ryan into 3 sacks, an interception, a lost fumble is one of his worst games. So if you're the Colts, because you're going to get Jonathan Taylor back, Nyheim Hines is practicing again, you're going to get him back. Do you go back to what you think you were last year, this run-heavy team against the Titans, or do you try to maybe duplicate some of what happened last week when Matt Ryan, I thought, finally played a game where he looked competent and quite dangerous, and they were more of an air team than they were a ground team?
Yeah, these teams developed during the course of the season, and they're a different team than the one that played the Titans a month ago. Graver, I'm sure you're a little concerned that they're coming up with solutions. Dennis Kelly played at left tackle last week. He quickly replaced their draft pick, and he played well and kind of solidified their offensive line a little bit. Alec Pierce has come along as a nice rookie wide receiver. Deion Jackson is like a nice little backup. Like, they're finding things on offense, and I feel like these teams never I was going to say it feels like they never sweep each other, but the Titans have beaten them 4 straight. How about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Dennis Kelly revenge game. He was a right tackle for the Titans. Now he's supplanted
and you wonder
Bernard
why
Raymond.
this game got drafted so late.
Well, hey, you know what? This is the second closest spread of any of the Sunday games, tied with the Chiefs 2.5-point favorites on the road, Titans 2.5-point favorites at home. It's like going to be a close game, most likely. It's a huge AFC South divisional game to position whoever wins with a lead going down the stretch where they don't play each other again. This is also the Colts' 5th division game in 7 weeks, which is crazy.
That's so stupid.
It is. And the CBS crew has their 5th CBS fifth-ranked crew out of the 5 CBS games. I don't really get it.
That's low-key
Here's
rating
why
here.
people don't. Yeah, watch it.
Yeah. Well,
Hey,
that's true.
Gravedigger.
Yes.
You're our AFC South consigliere. Keep going.
I think the Colts are going to stick to this passing approach because it worked so well last week, number one. And number two, the Titans' defensive strength is their run-stopping defensive line. They have been torched through the air all season. They've allowed 300-yard passers in 4 straight games. I think Matt Ryan's going to probably hit that number again in this one. That doesn't necessarily mean the Colts win, but I do think it's going to be like a 50-plus attempt game again for Matt Ryan trying to attack a weaker Titans secondary and staying away from the Titans' strength, which is running. I will be interested to see if Shaquille Leonard makes his return. He's back at practice.
Yeah, he's practicing. And, Jonathan Taylor also, it was a week ago where he was sort of said, on the ankle, it's just not right. And, I mean, he'll play, but I wonder if we're going to get last year's version of Jonathan Taylor at all this season, or if not for a while. Because when you hear ankle injury running back and it wasn't good a week ago, I don't know if this is the guy you lean on the same way as last season.
And I know it must be super annoying, Gravedigger. We've talked about this, that the Colts are in pretty good position. And, I called it out on Sunday's show that, to have 58 pass attempts as the Colts did and Ryan not to get sacked. These are all positive signs that Indy is out of the darkest winter of their season, which often is the beginning now. But, the Titans, I feel good about your Titans here, Justin. I think they're coming off a bye week. Henry finding his way. I think Tannehill will make some plays here, and this feels like a good Tennessee setup to really take control and sweep if you can sweep this series, unless you're hot about Jacksonville again, maybe they do show Vegas to be smart and they're back in the race. That's a pretty commanding lead if they can get a W here.
Yeah, I think it's a huge game for the Titans, and I actually feel good about the Titans in this one because Mike Vrabel's record coming off of a bye or off of a Thursday night game, I wish I had it in front of me. It's really good. It's like
80-0.
Make it up.
Or something.
Make it up.
75-4.
No, it's not that high,
7,003.
It is really, really good, and so I think the Titans will be well prepared. They're better rested than this Colts team coming into this game. I think it's going to be another game where they get Derrick Henry heavily involved in the passing game, like with 5 catches for 80 yards or something for Henry in this game, and I think the Titans could win it not comfortably, but more comfortably than they've won any game that they've won this year.
Wow. I mean, he's only coached for 4 years before this, Justin.
Right.
So your options are really 4-0 or 3-1.
Well, also including the break after
2-2.
a Thursday night game.
Oh, now you're
more than
just
10 days to
making up
prepare.
fake stats.
More than 10 days
that's
to
not
prepare.
a thing.
If I could get personal for a moment here, the best career advice I ever got, it was at the Super Bowl about 10 years ago. And I was lucky enough to run into John Madden at a restroom at a restaurant. And I was a little shy, obviously, and it was the bathroom, so it was kind of weird. But as he was walking out, I came up to him. I told him I was a huge fan and how important he's been, what a figure he was in my childhood. And he looked me right in the eyes, gave a good handshake and said to me, this is the advice I'll give you. And take this with you. If you don't know a stat or something, just make it up.
Well, how about this?
He did a fist pump, and
that's amazing.
And he walked away.
It's incredible advice.
That's a true story. How have I never heard this story? That's
amazing.
Of course, that's not a true story. That was completely made up.
You're taking the made-up advice to make things up. But the Titans are 4-0 after their bye in the Mike Vrabel era with an 82-point differential over those 4 games. They're scoring 33 points per game and allowing 12.5. Right. Tennessee has won by 20-plus points.
Okay, actually, another advice
Okay.
He said, don't say it's stats when they're just kind of made up.
Dan, you should not have acknowledged that was a fictitious story because I think people would have been thinking about that for the next 10 years.
He was outside the bathroom. He gave you a fist bump.
Let's close the curtain on AFC
I think
South
that Mike Vrabel is one of the most underrated coaches in the entire league.
I'm done.
Right, that drop doesn't need to exist. All right, close it out, Gregg. Unbelievably, sure, the Washington Commanders last. That makes sense. But the Green Bay Packers, the final pick of a draft.
Yeah, that's rough. And I'm not looking forward to watching this in particular, despite the, presence of Taylor Heineke back in our lives. He says he was a little overwhelmed last year as a starter. He feels like he'll be more prepared for it. And they can throw the ball around a little bit. They have weapons, and the Packers defense tends to lose guys in coverage. They've had a couple guys who had total career years a year ago, Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas, who aren't playing bad this year, but they're not playing like amazing anymore. And it just doesn't seem to be a very aggressive or particularly well-coached defense. They let passes and receptions happen in front of them and just try to make the tackle while giving up 13 yards at a time. So I don't know why I feel crazy. I know the Commanders have scored 12 points a game since week 3, yet I kind of feel like this game will be close at the end because most Packers games are.
I think it will be too. I mean, the Packers have scored 10 points in 6 quarters. They look fairly broken on offense to me. Like, I thought, if anything, if you're not going to have a coordinated passing attack, let Aaron Jones be the heart of the offense. That's not been the case. And, I mean, I don't love Washington in any game, but I do like Taylor Heineke honestly better than Carson Wentz. I'm probably in the vast minority there. I just think there's something to his game where it's not a big drop-off. And I think maybe that this is a team that needed a quarterback switch for multiple reasons. And if you got Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen against a Packers offensive line that has major issues last night, that was wrecked last week by Quinnen Williams, maybe you've got to find a way into this fourth quarter. And if something happens, the Packers become one of the most disappointing teams in the entire conference.
Yeah.
Or they get right.
Yeah, I think they're going to get right. I like them in this game a lot, and I think Matt LaFleur will look hard in the mirror after watching the game tape against the Jets and say, how am I still giving Aaron Jones game scripts where he has 3 touches in the first half against the Jets? They have to understand, and listen, that man knows more about offensive football in his pinky than old Zeuser or any of us for that matter. So
don't necessarily include Gregg and I in that.
Not Marc.
Awesome. My pinky is so smart.
But at the same time, like, don't overthink it. Your offensive passing game is just not there right now. And you have a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers that might be playing through an injury. They're obviously going to keep that quiet, but he was clearly favoring his right throwing thumb during that game against the Jets. I'm going to say it again. Give the ball to Aaron Jones. Like, the Browns should be giving the ball to Nick Chubb. Get A.J. Dillon involved. Make it a running attack. And then if the offensive passing game comes back and they figure some things out, then you can make it more balanced. It's okay to play through your running game, even though you have Aaron Rodgers, unless Aaron Rodgers isn't going to let that go. But at the same time, where the Packers are at a 500 team that looks like a 500 team at best, it's time to make some changes.
Now,
good opponent
you
for him,
kind of
though.
Convinced me, yeah. Like, wow, this is even a better lock maybe than the one I have. Just because, like, hey, it's still the Green Bay Packers.
Gregg does this every
I know.
week with the self-machinations and the
I'm just saying,
questioning
like,
of the lock.
If you had told us before the season, hey, you got a chance to lock up the Packers over the Commanders, it's like week 7. That sounds pretty delicious.
They were pretty bad, though, Greg. Green Bay was pretty bad.
It does sound delicious. That's why I'm doing it.
Okay,
I'm locking up the Packers.
Yeah. I like that lock. It also feels like the thing you do before we find out the Packers are even more broken than we realize.
Ooh,
but
that's wishful thinking. Here's the
so
three.
You moved off the Ravens. I kind of think that's a smart move.
No, that was Gravedigger is locking up the Packers. I am staying with the Ravens at this
He
point.
inserted himself back into the show, mercilessly.
Well, it's not my fault you drafted this game last, right after the Titans game.
Yeah, it's true. I know, and I have 3 early games now. It's a whole thing with Shook. It's a problem.
Why is Gravedigger not locking up the Titans, by the way?
Yeah,
the guy hates the Colts. He has no respect for the Colts.
He just said it'd be a blowout, too.
No, I think they win 31-24. So, to jinx. I can't jinx them.
To show how much this season has changed as we say goodbye, the 3 biggest declines in offensive EPA this season from any team, the 3rd biggest decline, the Buccaneers. 2nd biggest decline, the Packers. And the biggest decline is the Rams. It's like all these little superpowers from the NFC a year ago who have just hit the skids.
And it looks like
Greggy, that has absolutely been a driving factor in the chaos that we're seeing in the NFL right now. A lot of these war horses, these powerhouse teams of the past have come down while a lot of the bad teams have come up. And it's just creating this like really thick stew. Gross. Finally, before we say goodbye, let's check in on those lock of the week standings and see where we are. Old Zeuser drops another one with the Ravens, falls to 4-2. Gravedigger up to 4-2. Gregg 4-2.
Wait a minute.
And then Marc and Wes, both 3.
Hold on.
The West brothers, both 3.
By the way, I'm happy this is happening on national television.
What?
This is incorrect. I was 3-2 and won my Chargers lock, so I am 4-2.
Are you sure?
I am dead sure.
I think we'll just go with 3-3 though. It's
I know what you're
official.
doing because this is a weekly bit. It's a weekly bit. And you've really pushed into it this time, but I am 4-2 and should be atop the list, I think.
Well, for
my courageous lock win of a week ago, it happened on Monday night.
I mean, the Chargers didn't lose. I think everyone lost in that game, so I think I'm giving you a loss for that game.
You don't decide anything remotely close to this contest, Greg.
Mark, you want to know how the sausage gets made a little bit on this one?
I'm pretty sure I know, but you could tell everyone else if you'd like.
Some people behind the glass wanted it to say 1-5 for Mark, but I was like, no. What will get him much more mad if you just miss it by 1.
I thought it was 5-1 to be honest, but I'll 4-2 it is. Clowns.
All right. Thank you to everyone for watching. Heed the call. All right. Welcome back. It is now time for the back end of the draft, and picking is Marc Sessler, first of 2.
We are down to teams that, to me, are depressing, and I'm going to talk about 2 of them right. Well,
sell it, Sessler.
The Bucs at the Panthers. They both kind of strike me as tough to watch right now, which annoys me about the Bucs. But that's just been the case. That's been who they've been all year long. I don't know why last week against the Steelers, you don't have Brady taking more shots down the field. They were playing a secondary that was absolutely stripped of starters, no TJ Watt, and yet it looked like the Bucs offense we see most other weeks. He's throwing the ball well, but at the same time, it's just not happening. I feel like if you can lock down Mike Evans to some degree, then this Bucs offense has essentially been reduced to field goals. And not even making all those. It's like Brady is freaking out on the sideline. We're watching it right here on the clips. He just seems so frustrated and pent up. And I think you could just expect, Tampa's going to figure this out and round into something looking like they were 2 years ago or a year ago. I don't know if it's there.
This week it should be.
The thing is that you're playing the Panthers this week. So if you can't come out and drop 35 points on this team, then you got to look at why. You can't blame Bruce Arians. He's not part of this right now.
Has Carolina's defense been the biggest issue for them? I think
they're missing guys.
But they're starting to miss guys. They might get J.C. Horn back, who's been great for them, but they lost potentially 2 of their other starting cornerbacks, C.J. Henderson and Dante Jackson.
I would say the reason that you think that the Bucs could put up a ton of points in this is the fact that you've got P.J. Walker starting at quarterback for an offense that's broken down, and you get a lot of 3-and-outs, and you get a tired Carolina defense by the end.
Let me counter that. The reason I don't expect is because they just don't do it. This is their points per game this season. 19, 20, 12, 31 in a game that was a blowout. The other team scored 41,
Unfair.
21, and 18. They've been a 20-point a game offense this year for the most part. And this doesn't feel like a team to me like Cincinnati, Greg. I know you are not on the same page, but I feel like Cincinnati is a team that's finding itself and getting better and looks like they are about to click and go off. I do not see the Tampa Bay offense as being close to that right now. Now, the NFL is unpredictable. It could absolutely happen. They could score 35 points against a Panthers team where half the organization is on the phone looking for work for next season already. But there's just a lot of bad vibes, different than Cleveland. But again, bad juju around the Tampa Bay team.
No, they don't seem like they're having fun. And when you went through the point totals, I almost thought maybe that Chiefs game, that was the one game. And I don't think they were always chasing the score, but I think they played well from the first quarter to the end. It was like the one game they all felt alive again, especially Tom Brady. It was like,
but the Chiefs.
We're playing the Chiefs. This game actually means something to me. Tom Brady's it's like he's counting the days until the playoffs or something.
Yeah, I just thought that game, we're different on that point too, Greg, that game in particular. But I would imagine Kansas City was playing maybe a little bit of a different defense once they got ahead. I just would wonder what that game was like if their Tampa Bay's defense had showed up.
I want to make one quick thing about their defense and just about them in general. You're right. They're not the Bucs we expected. They used to be the best run defense in the league, just best every year by far. They're mediocre. They're dead last in rushing right now. And rushing, they used to be a very efficient rushing team. They are different. Todd Bowles made a statement after the game that some people are still living off of the Super Bowl, which I thought was a really cutting statement. The people are still living off the Super Bowl. And I'm just well, Todd Bowles, you wouldn't say that unless you're talking about specific players or players. player. And I was thinking, well, who's Todd Bowles talking about? I don't think he's talking about Tom Brady, actually, because he's a defensive guy. And I thought in my head, if I had to guess, it'd be Devin White. Devin White, who gets talked up as one of the great young linebackers in the league, but is always at the center of big plays being allowed. And I think is one of those guys who doesn't necessarily do his assignment and searches the big plays and hasn't played as well for the last year, especially this year, as people really on the outside believe. And then at his press conference on Wednesday, Todd Bowles pointed out that Devin White was responsible for the roughing the passer call last week and failing to cover Najee Harris. They asked him who had the busted coverage on that play, and he's like, Devin White. So I don't know. That was just my little mystery.
I think you've connected the dots very well there. I would also imagine that that whole statement isn't being made about one player alone, because that's the vibe
but Devin
of this
White
team.
Probably knows that he's talking about him, and I just find that interesting. It's just.
How about Lenny Fournette?
Yeah.
How about Bruce Arians?
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of candidates you could point to and just say this team is just, their vibe is not a fun one at the moment.
And by the way, Julio Jones, I believe, is still not practicing.
That's right.
So,
by the way, PJ Walker also is starting this game. So he will try to complete more than one pass that passed the line of scrimmage.